is Sam, and welcome to my YouTube channel. The other day, one of my subscribers told me that they like listening to my videos while they're studying, and that inspired me to make this video about what kind of student I was, and I would love to know what kind of students you were, or you still are, because that's always fascinated me as an ex-student myself, and also as a teacher, because I'm an English teacher. Before we do that, it would be amazing if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also tell me through a comment what kind of student you were. Now, what fascinated me about the comment was that as a student, when I was in school, I could never study with any kind of music or background noise or distraction. I had to be in complete silence, and I was very fascinated, confused, and intrigued by the fact that some of my classmates used to listen to music, or they used to to have the TV on in the background, and sometimes they would sort of glance over at the TV, and I never understood how that was possible. Maybe it's because I am a singer, so I can only imagine that if I had any kind of background music, my mind would not be able to focus on the subject, and it would just want to sing along to the song. So maybe if someone is not a singer or doesn't like music in that way, it wouldn't really bother them. So yeah, I could never picture myself studying while listening to music. I'm not saying it doesn't work, because it clearly does for other people, but not for me. So that's always fascinated me. So what kind of student was I? First of all, I was born and bred in Italy. I went to school in Italy, and I think I would make a separate video on the Italian school system, but all I can say here is that I have nothing but resentment for the Italian school system. I think it's terrible. I don't really know how other countries work, but I definitely was not impressed with Italy. Now, I was a proper geeky swot. I was the Hermione Granger of my class. I always had my hand up because I knew the answer to everything, and it was my doing, obviously, but it didn't come from a place of me actually wanting to be that, and I'll explain a bit more. As I've mentioned before, I like languages. I have a video here. I love maths as well, and I have another video on that over here. But yes, so the subjects that I've always genuinely liked were languages, and then later on I discovered that I liked maths and sciences in general. So why is that important? I was always the best in my class from my first year in primary school until the very last in secondary school. I had best marks, but that doesn't mean that I knew a lot of things. So my way of studying was really detrimental to me, and it had a terrible impact on my life. And this doesn't really, I can't really blame the Italian school system. I mean, I don't like what Italy offered in terms of curriculum and method, but I was the one who decided to study that hard, so it's on me. Now, as I'm sure I've mentioned before, any subject that isn't languages or maths is just a black hole. I don't care about anything else. rules. I know it's a terrible mentality, I know it's a very ignorant mentality, but I just can't help it. My brain simply doesn't care. If it's not languages of maths, my brain won't retain the information because it just could not care less. And anything that is not languages or maths and sciences, I absolutely detested, and I still do. I hated history, geography, philosophy. We also need to do a little bit of law and politics and economics, which I understand the usefulness of. Mainly law and economics. I do not understand the usefulness of history. And I genuinely wished my brain cared a bit more, because it would be good to know how the world works on a more technical level, but I just can't do it. And I've always said this, I will make a video about not being modest soon, so yes, I'm not modest. So I've always said that my brain is so busy being brilliant, absolutely exceptional at languages and maths, that it just doesn't have the capacity to focus on other subjects that it's not interested in. That's a problem. It's just that I'm not interested, and I've tried even with politics, even if I've tried, even now as an adult, I've tried reading something about the Italian government, for example. I understand the words, but then the minute I look at another page, it's gone, the information is gone, because my brain just doesn't care. Again, it's terrible. I am slightly ashamed of that, but I can't do anything about it. So, if this is how I feel, why was I the best at everything in my class? Well, that's a very good question that I've never quite been able to find an answer to. The only answer that I've been able to give myself is that I am so vain that I just, at the time, and even now probably, I just couldn't bring myself to not excel. Just the idea of doing a test and not knowing an answer, just one answer to a question, the idea even now kills me from the inside out. And I think I just wanted the best mark, just to brag, but I didn't brag. That's the thing. I didn't go around telling people that I was the best. So it wasn't even like a sort of weapon that I brandished and flaunted in my friends' faces. No. I knew that I was good. I hated myself for not being able not to be good at these subjects that have no impact on my life. But I couldn't help it, so it was a very conflicting turmoil inside me, because yes, I knew that I was doing something that was killing me, but I couldn't help it. And when I say killing, it's because I spent my whole life studying, because I had to excel at all these subjects. And I don't know about other countries, but in Italy we have a lot of subjects, and yes, I destroyed and devastated my brain by the amount of information that I forced and pushed and crammed into it, and all the information that I forced my poor brain to try and remember. And it obviously had an impact on my social life, and it made me really, really sad inside, because I didn't want to waste the time when I had a bit of time, I would spend my afternoons in my room dancing and singing to High School Musical. As pathetic as that may be, that's how I managed to express my love for performing. And then I was also an amateur dancer. But yes, I literally wasted so much of my teenage years on books and things that I never remembered the day after. So yes, let's talk about the subjects that I didn't like history. I was the best. But so in class, okay, let me rephrase this. With subjects that I didn't like history, I didn't understand it. My brain was not connected. So I never paid attention in class, not because I was playing on my phone or anything like that, but listening to my teacher talking about history did nothing to me, because I was so uninterested that it would literally go in through one ear and out the other. So it was pointless for me to listen to the teacher. When I had a history lesson, I would spend my whole 60 minutes highlighting the most important parts in my book, because then I knew that I would have to study from the book and I would just have to memorize everything, because again I had no mental or emotional connection to what I was reading, because I just did not care. So I was blessed with a great memory and a great photographic memory. So when I went home and I had to study history, what I would do was literally just drill it into my brain by repeating it out loud. That's why I could not have any music in the background. So the way I studied history, I would read a paragraph, well, the highlighted parts that I'd highlighted in class, and then I would just have to repeat the paragraph, repeat it until it got burned into my brain. But I didn't really understand what it was. I mean, I understood the words and the concepts, but they meant nothing to me. They gave me nothing. I couldn't even my brain couldn't create a mental picture of what was happening for me. It was just words that I had to repeat in order to pass the test. The good thing was that the tests that we had were based only on, well, at least in history, they were only based on what was written in the book. That's why I didn't actually have to listen and pay attention in class, because everything that the teacher was saying was obviously written in the book, and I was going to be tested on what the book said. And if I think about the amount of my life that I wasted succeeding in cramming all that useless, for me, information, I just want to cry, and I'm not even joking. And sometimes I have nightmares about this. Sometimes I dream that I'm back in school and I need to prepare for a test, and I am not joking. I can feel tears streaming down my face in real life while I'm sleeping, because it traumatized me so much. And the same thing, well, luckily geography we stopped studying geography after middle school. So when we started secondary school at 14, geography, at least in my course, didn't exist anymore. But then we had philosophy, and we had again economics. But I should probably make a video about the uselessness of history for my life. And again, I know it's very ignorant of me to say, and I actually some of my subscribers have told me I knew that on Monday we had this history test, so I would study to learn everything about that chapter. And when I say chapter, I mean I'm talking 30, 40 pages worth of very small writing. So it was a lot of information, a lot of dates that we just had to remember for the fun of it, for the sake of it, and all these tiny insignificant events that happened and had no impact or bearing on the society that we live in today, but we had to know all of these things. So I would learn everything, and then I would do my test. I knew everything, and then I'm not even joking, the moment I physically handed in my paper, my brain would literally reset and I forgot everything. So if for whatever reason my teacher had asked me a question the day after, I would not have been able to answer because my brain had already wiped everything off any kind of mental surface in my brain. It's just because I didn't care. So actually, the fact that I had pass marks was not really representative of my actual general knowledge in life, because yes, I mean, objectively, I knew everything there and then for the test, so you couldn't object to that because it was literally, on paper. But does that mean that I know anything about history today? Absolutely not. Everything's a black hole. I mean, as I think I've said before, anything before the year 2000 doesn't exist for me, history-wise. We can talk about music, we can talk about films, but in terms of big events, obviously, yeah, the wars and all that, yeah, the world wars, yes, but anything before that doesn't exist for me. And again, I know it's terrible, but I genuinely can't help it. And yes, I remember that I would just spend hours and hours and hours cramming all this information in, history, philosophy, all of that, and I would just walk around my house, repeating these things out loud. I couldn't even just reread the paragraph over and over again in my head. I had to read it out loud, and then I had to repeat it out loud. That's how I burnt the information onto my brain. And I also remember that, so for the final year, we then have a final exam, graduation, and I don't know how it works in other countries. I assume it's more or less the same, but for graduation we get tested on all the subjects that we had, and like history, we get tested on everything that we covered that year from September to the end of the year, and that goes for every single subject. Now, this was at least 15 years ago. Not every single subject. There were some subjects that we would get tested on. Well, we had Italian, obviously that was our first language. It was inevitable. Then we had the languages, because I studied languages. That we had a third test that had 4 subjects in it, and in these 4 subjects they were picked out of literally of a hat, I think. So there was a chance that maybe history wouldn't come out. In that case, we knew that in that 4-part test, history would not be included, so technically we didn't have to study it. But I was unlucky enough that I had history and philosophy, because I think they went hand in hand, so they counted as one. And then I had history of art, which I also hate with a passion. So yes, it was not pretty for me. I was extremely unlucky. I love maths, but maths or any kind of science was not picked. yes, and then we had an oral test on all the subjects that are picked out of this. Again, I think it's literally a hat. So yes, that's what happened. So I had to revisit and restudy everything that we'd done in history and history of art and philosophy from September until June when graduation started. And not only did I hate it, not only did it ruin my life, but I also remember that when I had to spend hours and hours and hours trying to relearn these things, and because I'm a dancer, the only sort of solace that I found was that while I was repeating things, when I was tired of walking around like a headless chicken, I would do the splits against the wall. So I would open my legs against the wall and push them more and more and more to try and open my legs even more. So that was the only sort of relief and release that I could find. That was the only good use that I could find for studying these subjects. Now, what about the subjects that I was good at? Luckily, those are languages and maths, I never really had to study at home. I was obviously very focused in class and my brain just absorbed everything. So I didn't actually have to spend time at home studying more. I obviously did because I'm a geek and like English, especially the first 2 years of secondary school. I had a great teacher that bombarded us with a lot of very good vocabulary, so I am eternally grateful. Now, not all of that vocabulary was ever needed in the tests, but because I loved English so much, I did spend extra time learning all the vocabulary. So grammar and general vocabulary and general pronunciation I did not need to spend extra time on, but smaller, less used words I did need a bit of extra work for, which is normal. And I remember I was such a geek and such a teacher. So my room had a sliding door that I don't even know why I even found out that I could take chalk from like chalk that you use for whiteboards and white and blackboards, and I could write on the door, and I loved it because it really made me feel like I was teaching myself at the same time. So I would do all my equations and all of those things on the door because I just liked it, and I would also learn all my vocabulary on the door. Years later, after I stopped studying, I realised that alone cost me a lot of extra time, because the physical fact that I was writing big, because I was writing basically on a blackboard, that took time. So if I'd written everything on a small piece of paper with a normal pen, it would have taken me much less. But I loved the idea and it made learning more fun for me. So I don't regret it, and also again I was learning something that I was actually very passionate about. Again, history and all of those things I just had to drum into my brain. I didn't have to write anything on the blackboard or on my door or anything like that. So yes, that's how I navigated my students' years. And yes, as I said, So I realised that I am a slow learner, and not just with subjects that I don't like, even English, even maths, especially with vocabulary. Let's talk about languages. So I love learning a lot of vocabulary just for the sake of it, even if it's vocabulary that I will never need. I just like to know that I know it in case I ever need it at any point in my life. And the way I learn vocabulary, even to this day, is very slow. It's very time consuming. It's not very it's very effective, but it's not easy. It's not quick. So I write the word that I want to learn. I write it. I have a little book. I write it on a notepad, and then I look for the definition, and then I write down the definition straight from the dictionary, basically, and then that's how I learn words. Then let's say I learn 10 new words today. I write them down. I write the definitions. I write the examples. Then tomorrow I will not remember them. I won't even remember what words I learned. Then I have to go over the words again the day after, reread them, and then they will never leave my brain. But yes, it's quite slow the way I learn in general when I want to go very deep. Again, general basic grammar, for example, I just absorbed during the class and I never had to look at it again. But when I want to be more specific and more detailed, I do need a lot of time. With maths, it's different. With maths, I remember when I used to be brilliant, and now I've lost a bit of brilliance because I haven't actively lived with maths for 15 years. I understood the concepts very quickly, so I didn't need to go over the concepts, but obviously formulas and all of that, I did need more time, and obviously I needed to put all these concepts into practice through exercises, so I had to spend time applying the concepts. But yes, I am a very slow learner, but when I learn something, it will never leave my brain if I'm interested. If I'm not interested, as we all know from my history and my geography and my philosophy, it will leave my brain immediately. As soon as I don't need it anymore, it will just go and run away from my brain. Also, I don't know why I never got into trouble for this, but again, let's go back to history because that really traumatized me, as I'm sure you can tell. Since I had no emotional connection, no mental connection to what I was studying, and because I have a great photographic memory, when I studied a topic, I learned everything word by word from the book, because again I had no personal input to give, so I would learn every single thing literally verbatim, word by word, and I don't know why I never got into trouble for this in tests, because when we had a written test, we would get questions, and so my replies, my answers were literally straight from the book, so it literally looked like I had copied the exact same paragraph where the answer was. It's like, you know, when you want to look for a specific word in a Word document, you type in the word that you want, and then you get where it is in the document. It was just like that. So as soon as my brain connected the question to a specific paragraph, I would just go, because I remember now that, I still remember that I remembered exactly where the paragraph was, exactly what words were used, and I think the reason why I never got into trouble was the fact that my teachers could say that I had no way of teaching, of cheating, because I had no books on my desk. I couldn't cheat. Also, I think that they realised that it literally looked like I was copying the book word by word, but I think they also thought that if I had wanted to cheat, so if I had found a way to cheat, and I literally had some notes and some parts of the book that I could consult, someone who wants to cheat would change the words a little bit to sort of hide the fact that they're copying. But the fact that I wasn't even trying to make it look like I wasn't copying, I think that's when they realised that I wasn't, because otherwise, if I had cared remotely about what I was doing, I would have tried to hide it and to mask it somehow, but I didn't care, and it was obvious that it was all genuine, it was meant with no malice. But yes, throughout my career as a student, especially when I had a new teacher, I always worried that they might mark me down, and I will never forget this. So, what I'm saying about history and geography is no comment on the teachers, because to be honest, I never even listened to my history teachers, and I had quite a few, so I can't even tell you if they were good or bad. So the way I dislike history has nothing to do with them. They just didn't do anything to make me dislike it, and there is nothing they could have done and nothing that anyone could do now to make me like history. It's just not in my DNA. But I remember once, it was my last year of secondary school, and we were getting ready for for graduation, and we had this history test, and from the very few things that I heard about my history teacher and from my history teacher, he was quite good. And we did this test again. I answered as if I'd been reading straight from my book, but this specific type of test that we did was in line with the graduation marking style, which is different from the normal school system in Italy. In Italy, you go from 0 to 10, 0 being terrible and 10 being the best. But when you do your graduation, you have from 0 to 15 for some reason, so that's how we were marked in this test. And he gave me 14 out of 15, and I was outraged because there was nothing else that I could have written to make my answer more perfect, because it was literally, again, it was burnt into my brain, and it was literally straight from the book. And I will never forget this. He told me that he gave me a bit less than maximum because he wanted me to put some kind of personal input into this. He didn't just want me to repeat things word by word. He didn't imply that I was cheating and that I'd copied from a book, but I think it was his way to encourage me to like history. And I, again, to this day, I was and I am so furious, because I understand what he meant, and actually as a teacher myself, I understand that you would want your students to like the subject, but still, you physically can't mark me down when my answers are perfect. So yes, again, I see what it was trying to do, and I appreciate it conceptually, but not for what it meant, because obviously I had my average general score, and being marked down in any way would then affect that. I was furious. But yes, that also happened. So again, if I could go back, I always say this, would I do things differently if I could go back? So would I study history a little bit less? Would I study geography nevertheless, I don't think I would, and I hate myself for it. But it's just, I genuinely think it's vanity. But for me, not even for other people, because again, I didn't go around telling people that I was the best. We all knew it. I didn't have to tell them. But yes, it wasn't for them. It was for me. So yeah. Okay, this was supposed to be a very short video, but obviously I like talking, as you know by now. So this is the kind of student that unfortunately I was, because again it destroyed my life in a way that, I mean, when I think about it, it does make me, it gives me anxiety. It makes me hollow inside, and I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it's true, and I will never forget once I finished my oral exam for graduation. That was it. My life as a student was over, because I knew I wasn't going to go to university, and I can't even say that the sense of freedom engulfed me, because I was so shocked and in such a state of disbelief that after 13 years of destroying my soul, studying things that I didn't care about, just like that, it was over. I couldn't believe it. And now it's been 15 years. If I think back on that time, no, it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And yes, I would never, ever go back, because it was, as a human being, I did it all to myself, but it was inhumane what I put myself through. But hey, it's too late now. I'm glad that I'm out of it. On that note, I will let you go. Let me know what kind of student you were or you are, and then I will tell you more about the Italian school system in the future. And for now, I will see you soon.